Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. To have a really cool review for you guys from the brand Revelot. They were founded back in 2017 out of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and they were originally founded through Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and known for really design cues that subtly draw upon mid-century classics and combine them with brutalism for a harmonious fusion of design elements incorporating angular facets, guilloche patterns, and steel polish combinations. Now, in terms of the type of watch, this is an everyday watch. Some key common characteristics in this language when you're looking for something that you can wear every day. Of course, you're going to find that versatile blend of both sporty and dressy attributes. This is their new release, the Terra, in the gradient black colorway, and this is a prototype preview. This is essentially a design that pays tribute to the iconic Dirty Dozen collection of field watches created by 12 different Swiss manufacturers during the final years of World War II, issued to British servicemen. These watches represented a unique intersection of horology and military history, holding a significant place in both watchmaking and wartime memorabilia. Now, this is not 100% final pricing that's been set, but you can expect early bird pricing for more basic configurations to be just at around $250, with mid-level steel models coming in around $300, which would be this model here, as well as also some slightly more expensive bronze variants coming in at $330. And that is, of course, early bird estimations, final pricing and everything like that. Of course, in full retail, eventually after production, those are going to vary, but I've been pretty impressed with this brand kind of from afar, and luckily for you guys in 2025, I was able to get a hold early of this release so I could really dive in. I have to say, guys, I'm incredibly impressed with the build quality on this timepiece. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys. Now, of course, Dirty Dozen watches have been back in a huge way as of late. Also, just kind of dressier watches, more classical watches in general. So it's nice to see that blend here of, again, sporty and dressy attributes, even with the field watch style, but also incorporating a lot of modern adventurous themes as well. Getting into these details, guys, look at that granular dial with that beautiful kind of fume gradation there. Very nice, great contrast. Just feels, again, it's that attention to detail. Then you're getting the nice Lume blocks there for the indices, and it looks fantastic. Everything in terms of the weight of the hands, I think all is very, very well dialed in. Also, the balance between flat surfaces, round surfaces, brushed surfaces, and polished surfaces all play together really, really nicely to give you a fair amount of visual punch. Now, the nice thing here is, although you're getting all of this visual punch, it is really nicely dialed in at just 38 millimeters in terms of the diameter. And then when you get to the thickness, guys, it's 11.5 millimeters thick, including that boxed sapphire. So very, very nice. And it might even look a little bit thick here when you look at it. And that's probably because you're surprised by how short this lug to lug is at just 44 millimeters. For those of you with smaller wrists, you can absolutely rejoice. And for those like me with slightly larger wrists, the nice thing is, again, although this is quite a svelte and dialed in piece, it also gives you a nice visual punch, so it doesn't feel undersized, it doesn't feel diminutive or dainty. It still feels quite nice and masculine and pop. You know, it just has that X factor and that pop on the wrist, which I can absolutely appreciate. So that crystal is a boxed sapphire, which is going to be mostly flat. It's just going to have really just the boxed edges there, as you guys can see. Very, very nice, giving you, again, more dimension, more depth to the overall design. You're getting an inner anti-reflective coating, so that's going to help with, of course, visibility and legibility depending on the different lighting conditions. The bezel itself is multi-angled and multi-finished. Check that out. You're getting a circular brush there on top. Then you're, of course, going to have that angled bevel, and then you're going to actually have a bit of vertical kind of machining there on that, on that actual side that sits against the mid case itself. The mid case is going to have a nice kind of industrial machined finish there, but you can see nice curved down, even though there's plenty of room for angles, and these angles look really great and flow beautifully with this bracelet, which is really, really well done, fully articulated, beautifully beveled, and I have to say again, for a watch that is going to be sold for around $300 at least to start, I'm blown away. I think if they would have just put a more expensive movement in here, and from my understanding that they do actually have more premium variations hopefully to come depending on the success of this model, it gets me excited because just the level of execution and the package apart from the movement itself, I think this watch could be sold easily and quickly for around $750 up to around $900 depending on what type of movement they would upgrade to, because the rest of the watch is so complete, guys. You're also getting a screw down crown, and even though it's not signed, it's beautifully decorated still by having that nice little pop of Lume there, which I think is really cool and definitely fits with the theme. And technically it kind of is signed because you can see that's actually their little logo there as well. As you can see, it's kind of like a sun spot. You kind of get that too there, and it's illuminated, which I think is very, very cool. Now, speaking of the movement, guys, inside here you're getting an automatic Seagull ST17. Biggest drawback for me is that it's non-hacking. Everything else is actually pretty good. 39-hour power reserve, 3 hertz beat rate, so that's going to be 21,600 vibrations per hour sweep there. So I don't even mind that, especially on a small second setup, to where a 4 hertz and a 3 hertz sweep is going to be very, very hard for you to tell with the naked eye because of how short and stubby a small seconds hand is going to be sweeping there. So if they just would switch this out to something like, let's say, a Swiss Sellita SW261 or a Landeron L24 small seconds like I've tested in other watches, those, I mean, they wouldn't even have to switch to Swiss made. I think if they made it like Swiss made in terms of doing the extra pieces to get this finished and everything, and ultimately assembled with a Swiss made movement and everything, putting Swiss made on the dial and everything that comes with that, I think they could sell it for even more with just how complete this package feels and how well executed it is in terms of attention to detail. Yeah, I think this could cost a lot more, and I'm blown away the fact that they're, potentially this is going to cost around $300 and or less, right, if you don't get it on this bracelet. Now, getting into the Lume itself, these are 3D Japanese Superluminova C3 blocks, and those indices look really fantastic. They play really well against these multi-finished hands, guys. Again, at this price point, the attention to detail there, did they have to have multi-finished and faceted hands? No, they don't, but they did, and it's quite impressive. Also, screw down crown, which is going to give you a confidence-inspiring 100 meters of water resistance, which is really great in terms of everyday use. 20mm lugs, guys, and the integration of these, of the bracelet, of the end link there. I love how it all comes together. You're also going to get quick release spring bars, guys, and then let's talk about the clasp. Nicely signed here. You can see milled push button trigger, fully milled folding section, milled clasp itself, and check that out. Toolless micro adjust, which is what everybody goes crazy for these days. 5 positions, nice setup there. You can push the button to release, and then you can just ratchet and click in, and it just works. It's a very simple layout, very smooth, guys. Check that out. Oh, did I mention in terms of the bracelet? Look at that. Let's get the camera in focus. Check that out. What are those? Those are screw links, screw pin construction, guys. Very, very good, and I appreciate that. So yeah, this watch really has it all for me. I love the aesthetic. It definitely is giving me vibes similar to some much more high-end pieces that are out there. Now that, of course, Bremont has rebranded stuff like this. I mean, the quality, though, is really fantastic. And again, my only drawback is I'm not huge into non-hacking movements. It's one of the things that kept me off of the Speedmaster Professional for so many years, and they only recently got got rid of that. So, I mean, I can't really be upset that this is a non-hacking movement, especially with a small seconds complication. It's not going to be as noticeable. But for me, that's just something personal. You know, so a lot of people won't really care about stuff like that. I just kind of am within my journey of watch collecting. So I'm really looking forward to future iterations. But with that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, as you can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, it wears quite beautifully, guys. And I know 7.5 inches is on the larger side of average, but I will say that, of course, my wrist is actually quite round and tall. So it's not like it's just this flat, ultra wide accommodating wrist. You know, it is slightly larger than average, but again, due to the shape and everything, you know, there's just a little bit more to that story. You guys can see beautiful drape here. Look at the light play, really fantastic, guys. And again, in this colorway, it is just fantastic. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to get a fair amount of perspective distortion, and it's just going to make the watch seem a lot larger than it actually is. So what I like to do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame so you guys can get still, you know, a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And check that out. This thing looks good. Quite handsome there. Beautifully faceted. The angles, the execution, at around $300. This just blows my mind, guys. And again, the high level of finish, the high level of spec here, when you consider everything that you're getting with this timepiece, it just makes me wish that it had a higher spec movement. Although I understand that the choice of movement is what keeps this thing so competitive price point wise at just around $300 in terms of the estimated eventual price. But man, again, guys, with the right movement, I could see myself paying $900 or something like this, or even more, depending, like if they went with like a chronometer grade or something like that. But if they just added a hacking movement, yeah, I'd be willing to pay, you know, upwards of $750 for something like this. And I think it would still be quite a deal and be quite competitive. But let me know down in the comments, is that enough of a motivator for some of you, or some of you just kind of glad? I know there's a big sector of folks that kind of prefer those more affordable movements, especially in watches that they don't really plan on trying to get serviced over the years. You know, they'd rather just replace the movement after it breaks. And I absolutely understand that philosophy as well, especially when it comes to micro brand watches, where maybe you're not necessarily looking for super long-term collectability or anything like that. You're more so just looking for a robust enough piece to wear, and you know, you're not as worried about things like timing accuracy and everything like that, just because you're wearing it more so as something to just enjoy and again, wear it for what it is, which is, it's just a fantastic accessory that we tend to also kind of you know, obsess over quite a bit as collectors. Now, with that said, let's actually get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Holy smokes, guys. Check that out. This Lume is blasting. And I have to say, it's glowing quite blue in terms of that hue. And another nice surprise is that running seconds hand is actually loomed as well. And you're even getting 5-second increments, so you can get more visibility. You're also even seeing that crown nicely loomed there. This Lume is fantastic. It doesn't need to be this good. A lot like the rest of the watch, where you're just like, did it need to have these facets? Did it need to have these angles? Did it need all this extra design? No, I mean, a dirty dozen watch just executed at today's standards would have sufficed. There's plenty of brands that are doing that right now that are making tons of sales, but to have something like this where they're doing that extra, they're going that extra distance, going that extra mile to just do things that they know collectors like and enthusiasts that really speak to their, you know, sensibilities. I just love that. But one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see with these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And my goodness, guys, this Lume is just fantastic. It's the Lume compound itself, very bright, very distinctive, and then of course you're getting such a nice application because those are big, meaty 3D blocks of Lume. So very, very cool. And then of course you guys can see that dial, the way that granular texture plays with the light. You can see here at an angle, the dial is going to be much darker, but you're still going to have that nice bit of contrast going from, low light to no light. And then when you're getting into that kind of mildly, illuminated setup, you're still going to have plenty of contrast. You're still going to be able to read that because you're going to get contrast in texture, contrast in color. You're going to just be getting a lot there that makes this very easy to read. And they just, I love that they went the extra mile here in so many different ways. I mean, look at that Lume. That is just fantastic. I almost want to keep it dark so we can just keep enjoying this Lume because it stands out so much. But let's get into the closing thoughts here. All right, guys, on the wrist, nicely dialed in wear, compact with the right amount of wrist presence. So some of you are thinking 38 millimeters, a little bit smaller than I'm comfortable with. Some of you are thinking 38 millimeters, a little bit bigger than I'm comfortable with. Guess what, guys? It's well balanced. So you're getting a lot of visual punch, but it is in a more reduced type of silhouette. And that I think is pretty well balanced when you think about the thickness, when you think about the length of the lug to lug, when you think about the taper on the bracelet being a little bit more mild, but still having a lot of that great visual interest by having those additional facets and angles. So again, it's really, really well balanced. Now, in terms of model variants, check the site links for current options and availability. It is still pretty early days as of me filming this. I believe the final, the actual official launch for these are going to happen maybe a day or two before this video actually publishes. So there should be better links down in the description, if not just a general link down to the Revelot site. Now, in terms of comparable models, guys, while Dirty Dozen homages have really seen a surge of popularity as of late, the Terra really separates itself by feeling like a complete package, top to bottom, guys. Again, it's really the combination, and yes, it does have elements that are out there, 3D Lume blocks, Dirty Dozen styling, fully loaded with the bracelet and the all these things. You can find them on other watches, sure, but they all come together here for a very cohesive themed execution that I can absolutely appreciate, and that's for me what make this piece really stand out. And I mean, that's even before the price point, which is mind blowing. Again, for me, I know part of that price point is settling for a more pedestrian movement. And it's more of, again, that's my issue with it. It doesn't have to be yours. So again, I'm very, very excited to see future upgrades that will be available for this piece with higher spec movements. But in terms of the bottom line for this one, guys, I am truly blown away with the quality and execution of the Terra. Revelot has absolutely become a brand I'll now be keeping an eye on, and they had some pretty cool looking divers that I have been trying to get a hold of that just are a crazy value proposition. So it's really cool to see this now, especially with, a lot of people's collection tastes are transitioning away from just kind of the very basic, I want a diver that does it all. It's cool to see stuff like this that can also do it all, even have crazy Lume that you don't need to use underwater, but in just times of darkness. And it's still going to check all the boxes, and it's going to give you something just a little bit more versatile than, your typical toolish dive watch. So while the non-hacking movement does keep the price down considerably due to the quality of the rest of the watch, I really look forward to seeing a future, more premium version of this watch, and I think that a variant powered by either a Swiss Sellita SW261-1 or Landeron L24 small seconds would make for a package that could command upwards of $750. And that's still, for me, quite an affordable sweet spot in the micro brand market at, a good amount under $1,000. But yeah, I mean, I could also see variants of this. You start thinking about mop dials and all the cool funky stuff that other micro brands can do, Meteor and all that. And maybe you do a chronometer grade movement, whatever. And yeah, I could even see with just a couple couple of those things, you know, that are mostly aesthetics swapped out, that something like this, thanks again to the execution and the overall, you know, package, that theme cohesion, I could see this costing a lot more, and me still being pretty excited to wear it, talk about it, and share it with you all. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do like, and if you aren't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.